mute yourself, and you click that raise hand again to lower your hand. We do have just only a couple of agenda items today, so Kathy, I'm going to start this recording, and we should be ready to go.
Okay, I'll call the meeting of the Plan Commission of Tuesday, April 20 to order. You've heard some of the basic rules about keeping yourself muted. If you've not attended a Plan Commission meeting before, the way it works is I will introduce the item, staff will give us a summary, and then the Plan Commission asks technical questions. And after that, we open it up to the public hearing and public comments. When that's finished, we bring it back to the commission for a vote. So, Mark, call the roll.
Mr. Hintz?
Present.
Mr. Coulibaly?
Here.
Ms. Davy? Councilmember Ford?
Here.
Mr. Gross? Mr. Kiefer? Mr. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Present.
Mr. Stengel?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Chairwoman Prop?
Here.
8 present.
Okay, Council, Plan Commission, you have the meeting of minutes for April 6th. What's your pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Mitchell, second.
Okay, we'll call any discussion on the minutes? Corrections? Then we'll call the roll.
Mr. Hintz?
Aye.
Mr. Coulibaly?
Aye.
Mr. Councilmember Ford?
Present.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Stengel?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Chairwoman Prop?
Aye.
Minutes are approved 7-0.
All right, the first item is a public hearing, conditional use permit request for commercial outdoor entertainment use at 2126 Algoma Boulevard. Were there any site inspections? I was one. The chair will accept the staff report as part of the record. Staff, go ahead with the summary.
Thank you. Mark, if you want to go to the next slide. All right, so the subject site is the Northside Bar and Grill located on the east side of Algoma Boulevard, south of the end of Wilson Avenue. The surrounding area is predominantly residential uses along with vacant urban mixed use zoning land to the north and Riverside Cemetery to the west. And the site is zoned urban mixed use. Go to the next slide. So here's an aerial view of the subject site. Again, it's currently used as a Northside Bar and Grill. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for commercial outdoor entertainment on the site. In the urban mixed use district, that is a conditional use. Next slide will be their site plan.
Sorry.
All right, so here's the site plan. So you can see there's a 30 by 50 tent along with a band setup proposed on the east side of the building. The band will be set up facing towards the bar to push the noise kind of that way. So staff did look into this application, which will include 6 outdoor music events. According to the application, they're expecting about 200 people per event. All events will be subject to the City of Oshkosh noise ordinance. So staff did check with the police department to see if there were any previous concerns related to noise complaints. And October of 2019, there was one complaint, as well as April 10th of this year. But those complaints were the music was off when the officer arrived on site. As far as the location of the setup, code requires a 50-foot separation for the neighboring residentially zoned properties to the east. Based on the site plan, looks like they're right about 50 feet, so that will be a condition that they'd be 50 feet off that property line. As far as parking, they're proposing no changes to the parking for the site. They will be losing 4 stalls during the events, as they'll be enclosed with snow fencing for security. For parking for events, they're proposing that overflow parking will be at neighboring properties for customer and employees to be used with a shuttle. And the bar will also use service of the Safe Ride Home program for customer transportation. The zoning ordinance also requires a buffer yard of a 0.4 opacity along neighboring residentially zoned properties for commercial outdoor entertainment. So the applicant will need to provide combination of fencing and or landscaping to provide that buffer from those residential properties. Staff did receive 2 letters from neighbors, one in support and one against the proposed CUP. And also we received 3 neighbor signatures in support of the proposal, which were all sent out to Plan Commission through an email. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit with the following conditions. One, that the event tent and stage shall be placed a minimum of 50 feet from the east property line. The tent and other temporary structures shall be removed from the site after the event has ended. Landscaping and or fencing shall be provided on the east side of the event area to meet the 0.4 opacity buffer yard requirement, and all events are subject to the City of Oshkosh noise ordinance.
Okay, Plan Commission, technical questions? Looks Mike Ford.
Thank you. Mark, well, first off, I should disclose that I did get a call and a letter from one of the neighbors as well. And I guess the question I have is what are the differences between a conditional use permit in this case and doing this through a temporary use permit?
So the difference between them is number of events. A TUP allows you up to 3 events a year. To exceed that 3 events, then it gets kicked up to the conditional use permit category.
Okay. One last question. Is it possible to have a concert out there that is in compliance with the noise ordinance? I mean, I guess that might be more of a theoretical question, but.
So when we saying compliance with the noise ordinance, it's really the time restrictions that apply. There is a cutoff per the noise ordinance of when those events must end. I believe, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 11 p.m.
If it's 10 or 11, it's one of those 2 times.
I think it may differ on Friday and Saturdays from kind of Monday, Thursday, Sunday.
Yeah, there's a difference from weekend to weekdays.
Okay, thank you.
Justin.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm aware that in a similar arrangement in Appleton, they limited the activities to like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Do we impose any restrictions that would limit, a Tuesday night concert, or kids are attending summer school or something like that? I'm assuming that most of these events would be on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday anyways, but.
We do not. I would have concern with a limitation of that nature, as it's not directly related to land use. That land use is the same on a Monday as it is a Friday or a Saturday. We've been advised to be concerned with those type of conditions.
Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I drive by this venue every day, twice a day, and there are frequently large tents up. So is this something that is new, or are we trying to rectify a problem that was identified?
They have received TUPs in the past for events. This again is taking it from the maximum 3 they were permitted a year to a higher number of 6 events.
And as a follow-up question, then how is the tent then going to be allowed to stay up all summer if it's just 3-6 events, or is it have to be removed in between events?
So one of the conditions we are recommending is that tent and any temporary structures be removed after each event.
Okay, John, or did you have a follow-up, Tom, or not? Okay, John. John or Tom, whoever's first.
Talk. There we go.
Are you on now, John?
He looks like he may be disconnecting a little bit.
Then we'll go to Justin first.
Yeah, why don't we go and then we'll go back to John.
Mark, one of the neighbor concerns was of guests, spilling onto the property, maybe causing, littering and potentially causing concern for conduct. Is that something that our board looks at, or are there techniques or strategies that, municipalities put in place as part of these types of discussions, with the change in what we permit for land use? Or are there things that we're not seeing that maybe the owner is suggesting they will be implementing to try and rectify or to address that concern?
Yeah, I believe in some of the one of the emails sent out today was some information from the owner about their anticipated way to handle some of that. One potential way this board could get involved is review or revocation of the conditional use permit if it did become an issue.
Okay, John, are you back?
Yeah, I think I am. I don't know. It was for some reason I got crashed out of here. Have we talked with the traffic department or OPD about the impact as far as because it was mentioned in one of the letters about single lane traffic, and is that a concern that we need to still address, or I don't know, because there was nothing mentioned about talking to anybody like that.
Yeah, so we reached out to OPD, who did not raise any concerns from that side of things.
Okay, if no one else is wanting to speak right now, I have a technical question. The tent would literally be placed behind the building and not over on that adjacent grassy area, which must be a vacant lot. Is that correct?
Correct. So it would be behind the building in the grass, kind of south of the parking lot. And I brought the site plan back up. Hopefully you can see it a little easier. They'd have one tent for the potential patrons, and then a separate tent the bar is what they're indicating in their plan.
Okay, because as I looked at it, I did do a site inspection. That area is pretty limited. Very small, frankly. I don't quite see how they can squeeze in a tent and still have that many patrons. So, and the other question was about landscaping. How can they possibly have a buffer fence between now and a couple weeks from now when they would want to have their first event? And certainly landscaping would not grow. How can that be implemented?
So similar to any new development or new conditional use permit that's issued, the code does have a minimum height at time of planting if you choose to use landscaping. Usually, for example, like arborvitae, I believe, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, they're 4 feet at height at time of planting. And then obviously they grow from there. And similarly with, the fence is obviously a more immediate of height. But the ordinance does specify minimum size at time of planting for landscaping.
Okay, well, planting a 4-foot arborvitae isn't gonna do much in the next, as I said, 2 weeks or 2 months. Okay, any other questions? Justin?
Is there a way to require, and this is probably going to happen anyways, but to require the direction of speakers and lights to be not facing the residents directly behind? I'm not sure if that's the family that is raising the concerns or not, but that they would be facing the street and not any of the homes.
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable land use related condition.
Okay, maybe later on provide guidance for making that possible.
Okay, any other technical questions?
Yes, I
If
have
not-
one. Can you hear me?
Okay,
Can
are
you hear
you,
me?
are you a member of the Plan Commission?
No, I'm actually a resident right
I'm
behind
getting ready.
Northside.
All right, I'm getting ready to ask for public comments, so hold off right now, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Plan Commission, seeing no other technical questions, we will open the public hearing now for anyone from the public that wishes to speak. And first, we would like to have a statement from the applicant, if the applicant is on this call. Is the applicant on the call, Mark?
Yes, it looks like they're trying to figure out how to unmute themselves.
Oh, okay.
Try it one more time. I think there you go. You should be good to go now.
We're not very technical savvy, especially on an iPad. So I'm Sherry. I'm the owner of Northside Bar and Grill. I know there's some concerns. We have had a tent up. I don't know the lady's name. It comes up as Jack Prop, co-host.
Madam Chairman.
We have had a tent up in the past in the same area. We've had karaoke out there. We've never had a problem. If the noise was too loud, we turned it down. As far as garbage, the litter, I have gone out on each event that we've ever had. Anything in the last 2 years, I have gone out and picked up garbage in the neighborhood, going down Wilson Street all the way down to Sheridan and each one of the crossroads. There's a couple of neighbors that actually saw me picking up trash on April 11th. When the cops got called on April 10th, it was because we had the door open to go in. The karaoke was playing and the band was leaving. So that was inside. We've had karaoke outside. The cops have come through and said it wasn't that loud. Just asked us if we could turn it down a little bit more. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I don't want to disturb anyone. We were not able to go to talk to the neighbor, the second house in, the one that has a complaint. We do have a recommendation as to what we're willing to do. I have a friend that owns Wisconsin Warning Lights of Appleton. They were going to get us some traffic cones to put in front of their house so that no one parks in front of there. The trash issue, like I said, we have no problem. We've done it. We've been doing it. Anyone that has gone past our property has noticed that our property is picked up daily. The fence, I have no problem with doing. I just don't know if I'm supposed to continue with a snow fence or actually install like one of those wooden fences or like you said, that arborvitae thing. As far as the speakers and everything, they would be facing the bar. They would not be facing any residents. I had to draw in on this map that's on here. If you look where it says speakers, they're facing 2126. They're facing Algoma, not towards Wilson or the back properties. As far as like the parking and stuff, we've contracted a cab. We're part of Safe Ride. We have the Safe Ride program through Tavern League. We also contacted Antonio. He's another cab driver here in Oshkosh. He will be sitting in those first two stalls up by where security is so that we have a cab on site. We don't have to sit and wait an hour and a half for the city cab to come and get drivers. I do not let my bartenders drink. My bartenders are not allowed to drink while they are working. So if you would get drunk and they determine that, yeah, you've had enough, We either call a Safe Ride, Antonio, or they have called me in the past, and I've come from my house, which is a block away, and I take customers home all the time. So for safety reasons, my nieces and nephews live on Wilson Street. I do not want drunk drivers driving down any street, and this is how my policy has been for the last 2 years. I don't play around when it comes to drunk driving. I don't want those kids hurt or any other kids, or let alone an adult or someone else. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I just need direction.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we take more public comment, and then if we have answers to our questions. Mr. Hutchinson?
Hi there. I'm Scott Hutchinson, and my wife's here with me. We live at 2021 Wilson. And we just have several objections to this conditional use permit. And I want to clarify something. This is talked about as though, you know, this is what's proposed. I can tell you what has happened in the past. So our first issue is allowing the music to go. I mean, first of all, even though the speakers are facing the other way, it's loud in our yard.
Bedroom.
Yeah, and our bedrooms are on the same, you know, face. I mean, this is about 110 feet from our bedrooms. You can't have casual conversation in the backyard. And, you know, there's been some events that have ended earlier, which aren't as bad, but going to 11 o'clock is really unreasonable for our quality of life. You know, you know, and, you know, trying to get to sleep and stuff. I mean, it's kind of like, I hope I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but it's like a miniature water fest in my backyard.
Yeah.
The second issue is 6 events. That's a lot. That's a lot of disruption and a lot of negative effect on our quality of life. We pay taxes just like everybody else. And, you know, when we moved here, there was one event a year. It was July 4th. And, you know, we kind of just made a point not to be here that weekend, but that was it. And now this is requesting 6 times. To me, that's really going to be unpleasant for us. And, I mean, this bar is, it's fine for a little, you know, community watering hole, but I mean, it's surrounded by residents. So, when you have an event that big, it's going to disrupt the neighborhood. The third issue that we run into is our Wilson Avenue gets so congested. And you know, it's just difficult for us to get in and out. I mean, it's not wide enough really to have people parked on both sides all the way up and down. And I know you've offered for some alternate parking spots, but you know, people are lazy and they're going to want to park as close as they can. If I want to go out fishing on a Saturday, I don't know that I could get my boat back in my garage, and it's not that big a boat. So I don't know what a solution to that would be. I mean, people can park where they want, but this, you know, an event like this is just going to draw people in here, and it's just very congested out there. You know, and despite, I mean, the fact of the matter is people are at a bar and some of these people are getting, you know, into their vehicle and they're intoxicated. I don't know how you would avoid that. Unfortunately, we've had one major run-in and, you know, some minor ones with inappropriate behavior from people coming or going to these events. I don't know if you want to highlight the one that happened. This was a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if it was under the current ownership or not, but there was a pair of young people that were trying to help their friend that was about to pass out to, you know, dump them in the car, which was parked right in front of our house. And it was still daytime, and kids are playing, we had some kids over playing in the yard, and Lisa reminds them that, hey, you can't just dump somebody in your car like that. And they started swearing at her. And eventually they moved the car, but I wasn't here. But it was a pretty unpleasant scene. And then late at the event a couple weeks ago, I know there was somebody walking home, and a gentleman walking home, and my daughter's friend is pulling her car and trying to squeeze it into our driveway. She's going to spend the night with us, and the guy comes up into our driveway and says, "Do you live here?" You know, to an 18-year-old. And I just, this sort of thing is just going to get worse. It's just going to happen more often. And yeah, as far as the trash, I mean, we sent pictures. I mean, the pictures don't lie. They were there. That was taken the next morning. And it's not saying it's excessive, but there was, you know, beer cans laying, or they weren't beer, but, you know, some other alcoholic beverage cans laying in our yard. So, I mean, that's kind of the big five, but I mean, this really would be very negative to our quality of life. And I just don't, you know, that lot is very small. And I mean, just picture, you know, think about yourself. If your neighbor one house over had a band playing outside, how loud would it be at your house?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this item?
Yes, I do. I
Okay.
live at 2038 Roosevelt. I'm Samantha Williams.
Could you give us your name, please?
It's Samantha Williams.
Thank you.
My husband and I both work on the weekends. We hear the music over our own TV, and we have two lots and our house. We always have garbage in the front lot, and it's not been picked up. I mean, we've had to pick up numerous of times with cigarette butts and cigarette containers. We have a 2-year-old and a puppy, and I mean, he goes to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock every night, and to have a band until 11 is just crazy. And then he doesn't want to sleep. He wants to go outside because he hears that music. So I just don't think it's reasonable. And there's empty drink cups in our yard too. I mean, people are sitting there parking like all by our street. I mean, it's just as congested as it is on Wilson Street. And then people throw garbage out of their cars, and they're crossing across our lawn to get to the bar. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else from the public that wants to speak on this item? Anybody else wanting to speak on this item? Okay, Mark, were there some points raised by the applicant that you need to address?
So the question related to the fencing, yeah, the snow fencing would not be sufficient. A solid fence would need to go up in its place. Or landscaping, those were the two options. But yeah, the snow fencing would not meet the requirements.
How high would the fence need to be?
Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 feet?
Yeah, 6-foot solid fencing would meet that buffer requirement. Or again, arborvitae type screening.
Okay. Any other public comment? Applicant, Sherry, would you like to say something else now?
For the fencing, would that just go on the east side, or would that also be on the south? The south and the east?
Believe just the east. If it's residential zoning, and let me just check my map real quick and see what the zoning is to the south. It would just be to the east because to the south is zoned urban mixed use.
And then would we still keep up the snow fence on the south side then?
Yep, you could put it really anywhere in that grassed area between the parking lot and the east property line.
Okay, anything else you'd like to say, Sherry?
No, just that we're really trying. I mean, I went out, like I said, I went out on April 11th. It was probably, I want to say 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I went and picked up. I did not go up on Jesse Williams' side. I will make it a point to start going all the way around, not just up on those cross streets by Wilson, Minerva, Sheridan, and stuff like that.
Okay, it looks like public comment is over, so we will close the public hearing. Commission, I need a motion.
Mitchell, make a motion to adopt the findings, recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Need a second. Anybody going to second the motion?
I'll second. Ford.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on the motion. Justin, is that your hand up?
Yeah. We had just talked about adding a condition, and I know that the owner suggested that, you know, lighting and audio would be directed away from the neighbors, but if maybe it is a good idea to add that as a formality, that we would like to not have, you know, lighting direct or music directed exclusively at their home. So to add that as a provision, I don't know what the language would be. If Mark, you're willing to offer an example.
I would say we would just need you to make a motion to add condition number 5, requiring that the stage and equipment associated with events be directed at the bar. I can wordsmith it before it gets on the final resolution.
And then nothing's preventing me from making that, even though I brought this to the floor.
No, it's you can make that motion to amend it, or as it is your motion, you could just include it as part of your original motion.
Well, I'll add it as an amendment, and if other people support it, which I'm sure they will, but I'd like to make an amendment to add condition number 5, that stage lighting and audio be directed at the bar.
Is there a second to the amendment?
A second.
Any discussion on the amendment? If not, Mike, you want to speak to the amendment?
No, I'm sorry. I was going to speak to the,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, then I'll call the roll on the amendment.
Mr. Hintz. Did we lose John again?
Looks like it.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Coulibaly.
Aye.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
No.
Mr. Stengel.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Chairwoman Prop.
Aye.
Amendment carries 7-1.
Okay, Mike, I don't see your hand now, but yeah, there I see you. I'll recognize you to talk on the overall motion.
All right, my hand is back. Thank you. So I guess my main concern with this is based on what the neighbors have said tonight, is with condition number 2 about a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property. It certainly sounds that way to me, and I wonder if the route of a temporary use permit, which they would still, correct me if I'm wrong, city staff, which even if we vote this down today, they still have the option of doing that, which would allow them to have up to 3 events. I would be more comfortable with that, as it wouldn't violate one of these conditions that's necessary for us to approve a conditional use permit, and also not totally stop them from having their outdoor events, and put a little less pressure on the neighbors. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'd like to comment on this item. As I said, I drove by the site carefully, all sides, and I'm appalled, frankly. I think the site's far too small for what they want to do there. And one of my criteria is, would I mind living there in that environment as a neighbor? If I had to live there myself. And frankly, I would. This would be very disruptive to me. I think 6 events are way too many. If there is an option for them to have the 3 temporary ones, fine. I don't recall ever voting on this if we've had conditional use permits before, but I think this is excessive and I plan to vote no. More discussion.
It looked like Mr. Kulbali had his hand up.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Mamadou.
Hi, thank you, Mrs. Chair. I saw 3 major issues raised by the neighbors: the trash, the parking, and the noise. And I also see attempt by the owner to address this. I didn't see much efforts for them to find a compromise and talk as neighbors, to try to mitigate and to get a compromise. So that would have been a good thing to encourage. But where we are at, it's either a yes or no to allow this. And it seems like the trash issue is something that the owner has in mind, making effort to collect trash around. And the parking issue, freeing the area around the neighbors who has complained about it. But the noise, I see the efforts to redirect the speakers and the fence. I don't know about snow fence. How sound is it? Something for the sound? How soundproof is that type of fence? Can you tell us about it, Mark?
So the code requirement would be a solid fence. So like a solid wood fence would meet the code requirement.
Meaning this fence will not prevent the noise from traveling to the,
6 foot tall is typically going to reduce the noise to a degree. I will not be able to say it's going to reduce all the noise, but it affects it. To what degree, it's hard to say.
Okay, so maybe that would be something to discuss with the neighbor. Right.
Okay, Jay?
Yes, I just had a question maybe Mark could answer. Is there any restriction to the number of temporary use permits to be issued during a calendar year? Thought being that if we approve a temporary use permit where they would get 3, we could reevaluate after the 3 and see if there are any problems, or if it's going well, we could issue another temporary use permit. Instead of doing the conditional use where we're giving up the 6.
Yeah, code allows by right 3 temporary use permits per year. So those don't go through plan commission. They are by right allowed through the zoning ordinance.
Understood. Thank you.
John Kiefer.
I just wanted to echo off of Mr. Ford's comments especially on the recommendations or conditions number 2, that it would not result in substantial or undue adverse impact. And I believe it would adversely impact the neighboring areas. So I think based on just that alone, I will not be voting for this conditional use permit.
Justin?
Mark, you mentioned that if they didn't follow, or if the owners didn't follow the the language of what we are considering today, if it was passed, that there was the recourse for the plan commission or council to revoke that. What is the process for, if this goes through and a neighbor believes that they're not following it, or if it's identified that they're not following it, what's the process for somebody to have it such that they can levy that complaint and then come back to the commission?
Yeah, they would make those complaints to staff or council, at which time, they'd obviously be investigated, and then if revocation seemed like the appropriate or council directed it, staff initiates that revocation and we bring it back to plan commission, then ultimately council makes that decision.
Thanks. I just wanted to note that when this happened downtown, Fox River House in Appleton, it was extremely disappointing, but understandable. Live music venues are, for a large portion of the population, a really important quality of life factor. And while the owner has mentioned karaoke, which might not qualify as the arts, a lot of live music does include original live music or local bands supporting the local artistic community. There's not really much of that offered outside of directly downtown, and to have another venue in another location of town would be a valuable asset. I think that we have some support from neighbors and some opposition from neighbors, as Mamadou has indicated, that the neighbors that are voicing concerns have very legitimate concerns. And this proposal tries to balance those concerns with the interests of the bar owner, who is trying probably currently to identify some sort of avenue to economically sustain themselves, given the current pandemic and all of the challenges that has imposed, in the interest of people to potentially gather outside rather than in small enclosed spaces. This seems like, to me, almost like a no-brainer that we support this. We have the fencing put up in place, and if the owner doesn't follow through with their end, we simply revoke it, and we're not stuck for 6 or for years or anything. But if they do follow it and they do a great job, well, what a valuable addition to the community.
Okay, thank you. Philip?
I guess I just want to echo the other thoughts that, if we can somehow find some sort of a way to compromise, that's how we should do this. I can empathize with both parties. But if there's a way that we can find a compromise in some other way, that's what I would want to support.
Okay. John, you had something else you want to say?
I may not have unraised my hand. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
Well, I see Sherry wants to speak, but normally we don't allow people to speak now. Mamadou. Mamadou, go ahead.
So, no, I made a mistake, but
You made a mistake. Okay. Okay.
Compromising is what.
Normally we don't allow an applicant to speak again. Would the plan commission like to hear from Sherry again? Speak up, people.
I'm seeing some thumbs up from people.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Sherry, then we will make an exception and allow you to speak again. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Like I said earlier, we're gonna put up those cones for, I don't remember the name of the couple that was on. We'll have some traffic cones to put directly in front, and we'll have our security in the back driveway. So if they need it moved, we can move it for them. Another recommendation that we just thought of with the music. Okay, so with the music and the speakers facing the bar, I have no problem contacting either one of them and saying, hey, could you, stand in your backyard for a few minutes while they're doing a test? You know how they test their music, the band people? I think they're called sound checks. Seeing if it's too loud and then having the band turn it down. I have no problem working with these guys. We just want a chance to be able to do this. And, like with, I think that Justin guy said was with the temporary, that if we screw up, you pull it. But with the temporary use permit, isn't that where we can only play till dusk? Where it's like, so if the sun sets at 7:30, the band has to be done? How does that work if we wanted to play till 11 o'clock on the temporary use permit, not the conditional?
Correct. The temporary use permit is limited to daylight hours, and again, 3 total per year, and again, in daylight hours.
Yep. So, and right now, we're only looking at four bands.
Then why do we have, Mark, why do we have, are we talking about 6? Because it's a maximum of 6?
No, I believe that was what the application originally was in it. You could reduce that to 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the application noted 6.
Okay, but our conditions don't say anything about 4 or 6. Correct.
Madam Chair, can we make a motion to add a condition? To add, amend it and add a condition for a limit of 4 events?
You could.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion on the amendment to limit the conditional use permit to 4 events. Discussion, anybody? Mike Ford?
Yeah, I guess I just noticed one of the neighbors had his hand up, and I know we made an exception for the applicant to speak again. I wonder if we might make that exception again.
I think we could, but I think we should go through this amendment first.
Take the amendment first and then.
Got it. Sounds good.
Right. So Justin, you want to speak on the amendment?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think if 4 makes this more palatable for other folks, that may make sense. You know, I don't think 4 versus 6 is really that crazy of a change. But in particular, if the owner is only thinking of doing 4 anyways, then again, a no-brainer.
Okay. Any other commission discussion on the motion to limit to 4? Then I'll call the roll on the amendment to limit the CUP to 4 events.
Mr. Hintz,
Aye.
Mr. Coulibaly,
Aye.
Councilmember Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer,
No.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
No.
Mr. Stengel,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall,
Aye.
Chairwoman Prop.
Aye.
The second amendment is passed 7-2.
Okay. Then we'll go back now and allow Mr. Hutchinson to speak once more.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, and I appreciate Sherry trying to work with us, but the issue with the music is the drums and bass guitar. How much can you turn down drums? And that's what we hear in our house is the bass travels through the ground. And I realistically don't understand how you're going to limit that unless you're going to have folk music. And I don't think that's your intention. So the comment about a fence, the music bounces off the buildings. I don't think a fence is going to do anything to limit the sound. It may look better, but I know a little bit about sound. Of run soundboards at some places, and I'm pretty confident in my assessment there. So I just want to point that out, that I appreciate the goodwill, but you got live music, it's loud, and there's just not much you can do to turn it down.
Okay, thank you very much. Commission, are we ready for a vote? Then I'll call the roll on the amended ordinance.
Yeah, so we have a motion with two amendments that we're voting on, to include condition number 5. And that's the audio related one pointed at the bar, and then condition number 6, limiting it to 4 events. Mr. Hintz?
Lost him again.
All right, we'll give him a minute and then we'll come
Okay.
back to him. Mr. Koulibaly,
Nay.
Mr. Ford,
No.
Mr. Kiefer,
No.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
No.
Mr. Stengel,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
No.
Is Mr. Hintz back with us?
I am. Aye.
And Chairwoman Prop.
No.
Motion is denied 5-4.
I have a question, Mark. Does this move ahead anyway to the city council?
Correct. This will go to the council next week with an unfavorable recommendation from the Plan Commission that includes both amendments.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Okay, next item, public hearing. Zone change from neighborhood mixed use district to neighborhood mixed use district with a planned development overlay. Approval of general plan and specific implementation plan for outdoor seating at 1903 Harrison Street. Any site inspections? I had one. The chair will accept the staff report as part of the record. Staff, go ahead with a summary.
Thank you. Go to the next slide yet. All right, so the subject site is Karmali's Bar, located at the corner of East Grunwald Avenue and Harrison Street. Surrounding area to the north, south, and west is residential uses, and then commercial and industrial uses to the east. Property is zoned NMU, and they are requesting a rezone to be zoned NMU with a planned development overlay to allow for an outdoor seating area. Next slide. Here's an aerial view of the subject site. So they have the bar restaurant kind of in the middle of the site with parking lot around it. And then again, residential uses to the east, south, or west, south, and north. Next slide. So the applicant is proposing to have an outdoor seating area with 8 tables on the west side of the building. So that'd be considered a commercial or outdoor commercial entertainment land use for the outdoor seating and dining. So to allow it in that location with a 16-foot separation from the neighboring residential properties, where a 50-foot separation is required, a BSM is required, and that's where the applicant is requesting a rezone to NMU. NMUPD. So staff is supportive of that rezone, as it's kind of a unique scenario with the restaurant being bordered by residential uses and having limited opportunities to expand. So staff is supportive of the rezone, and also staff is supportive of a base standard modification to allow that reduced separation to 16 feet, as it's the most feasible location on site for them to have that outdoor seating area that's right at the dining room. And they do plan to install an overhead glass door to access that area for staff. They did reach out to the neighboring residential properties, and they do support of the location of the outdoor dining area. They're also requesting a BSM to have a reduced buffer yard, where code requires a 0.4 opacity buffer yard. So that would require the landscaping as well as the fencing based on this separation there. They're only proposing the 6-foot solid wood fencing around the outdoor seating area and no landscaping, but they have very limited area to add landscaping. So staff is okay with just having the 6-foot solid fencing around the outdoor seating area. Next slide. So here's kind of a view of the tables. So, 8 tables accessed off the dining room. It's like 4 chairs at each table, and again, surrounded by that 6-foot fencing. Next slide. And here's an image of the 6-foot tall solid fencing they're proposing to have around that outdoor seating area. And this did go to a workshop in June of 2020, and staff did voice support for it at that time. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the rezone GDP and SIP to allow for the outdoor seating area with the condition that a BSM is approved to allow for reduced separation from the residentially zoned properties to 16 feet, which requires 50-foot separation. The outdoor seating area shall comply with the City of Oshkosh noise ordinance. BSM to allow 0.4 opacity buffer yard with 0 landscaping points and 6-foot tall solid fencing. Also, the final lighting plan will need to be submitted and reviewed by the Department of Community Development.
And as Brian noted, these property owners had a number of discussions with their neighbors last summer when we workshopped this. So after those discussions and after discussions with Plan Commission last year, they did propose to move forward with this. One note, and I don't know if Brian mentioned this is seasonal. As you can see, if I go back to the site plan here, they are showing those traffic barriers. This would be a decent weather type land use. And in the winter, the seating area would be removed, the traffic barriers removed, and it function as parking.
Okay, I thought we'd seen this before. Technical questions, anyone? Anyone with technical questions? I don't see any. Then we'll open the public hearing. Is the applicant present? Have a statement?
Yes, we're present.
Any comments you'd like to add?
We did already install the overhead door. If any of you guys have come through Carmali's, we've totally renovated the whole dining room. And it flows perfectly with what our idea is for the outdoor dining. It's going to complement it greatly. So that is installed already. We haven't planned on it, but it's all done. Just to let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Also, just one other final note. With everything that's obviously happened in the last year with the COVID, we find that this is just another way for our patrons to be more comfortable to come dine with us and go out and eat. We all know everybody's had a hard time with this last year, and we're just trying to make things more comfortable for the general public. And this is another great way of doing it. We plan on putting flower pots and making it very, very nice to look at out there as well as they dine. Our intent is not for music. It is really extra dining space outdoors to make people more comfortable.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this item? Anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this item? You see anyone, Mark?
I do not.
Okay, then we'll close the public hearing. Commission, we need a motion.
Ford, motion to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Perry, second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Mr. Hintz.
Aye.
Mr. Coulibaly.
Aye.
Mr. Ford. Mr. Kiefer.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Aye.
Mr. Stengel.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Chairwoman Prop.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, planning director's report is next.
Thank you. So just a couple of notes I wanted to make today for the group. The first is in the near future. Mr. Roloff's office will be reaching out to you about potential dates for an upcoming joint workshop. Right now, we're looking at potentially in June between Plan Commission, Council, Parks Board, Redevelopment Authority to take a look at our our subdivision ordinance update that we're working on, as well as some other subdivision related issues and items that we'd like to discuss with you. The cost of subdivisions have obviously increased, and to the point where they're starting to conflict with other initiatives in the city. You know, how do we balance some of the things with parkland dedication, park fees, affordable housing, subdivisions? There's a lot of moving parts when they come to these. So we felt it was appropriate to have a workshop with a lot of the individuals involved in the decision making, and try to decide what the priority is for the city and how we want to be doing development and what we can do to best address these multiple different avenues that come into play when we look at subdivision development. So we're looking at about a 90-minute workshop, which is a little longer than we normally workshop, but there's a lot of information we want to get out to you, as well as, like I said, council, RDA, some of those other entities, so we can start to figure out from a policy standpoint where the city wants to go with this stuff. So be looking for that in the next couple of weeks. Second one is the housing study. The housing study had its technical committee kickoff meeting last week. I know 3 members of the Plan Commission were able to attend. So excited that we're finally getting this process started. And we're very early on in it, but I think hopefully would lead to some great outcomes for the city. I don't know if Mr. Mitchell or Mr. Kiefer that were on that have any comments on kind of what they thought about that first technical committee update. But from my perspective, I'm pretty excited that we got this thing going.
Yeah, just add that there is a survey that is going to be sent out, and hopefully everybody on the Plan Commission will take some time to fill that out.
That is everything I had.
Okay, then I think we need a motion to adjourn prior to our workshops. May I have a motion?
Marshall, so moved.
And second.
Okay, call the roll, please, on adjournment.
Mr. Hintz? I think he's timing out again. Mr. Coulibaly?
Aye.
Councilmember Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer?
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Stengel?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Hintz, you back? Chairwoman Prop?
Aye.
Motion carries 8-0.
Okay, on to the workshops when you're ready.
All right, Mr. Hintz,